What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with Morten Jensen of the NBA podcast fame, of Yahoo Sports fame, of Forbes fame, and of OnlyFans celebrity. The NBA playoffs have started, and guess what? We're not going to talk about them. Only a game from each series is in the books. We'll have something up later this week on just sort of our biggest takeaways and observations so far. We don't want to hit them just yet. We want multiple games under our belts. So we are instead going to catch up on a lot of turnover happening around the NBA in the aftermath of the close of the regular season. We have not discussed it all at length, with the exception of Morten and I did talk about Michael Malone and Calvin Booth being dispatched, let's call it, from the Denver Nuggets. So we will not be discussing that, especially because they're in a playoff series right now. Before we get started, though, a lot of just crucial decisions being made around the league. Mort, how are you doing?
Doing well, sir. Doing well. It was such a news dump over the past few days, well, week, pretty much, of firings and hirings, and it's all confusing and great and very typical of the NBA. So I'm with it. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. I will say it is atypical to me in the sense that we don't normally see per year this much top of the line front office upheaval.
That is true. Yes, that is true.
You're normally focused on coaches, and now it's, all right, bye-bye Landry Fields.
Yep.
Which, doesn't that seem like a good place to start? The Atlanta Hawks, Landry Fields, their general manager, has been fired. Ansi Salah will be promoted to GM, and the search for a president of basketball operations is already underway. Sticking with that, just what are your impressions of them going in this direction? And do you think it could mean anything for just Quinn Snyder? Since we know, I know that, Salah's a member of this front office already, but don't new front offices tend to like to make their mark by making their own coaching hire? That's just something I have circled here.
Yeah, same. I don't think any coach can sit there and go, "Oh yeah, my job is safe," when you see a major change in management. It's not one of those things where it's like totally egregious or anything. Like, I could see why they would look at the whole Dejounte Murray experiment and say, "Oh, we lost a lot of assets in that one. Like, we have to do something else." But then you would kind of wonder if the timing of it all. But you got the first pick last year. You got Zachary Richardson in there. I wonder if they also just kind of felt like, all right, now might be the time. And adding to the speculation, in my perspective, is also, if you were skeptical of Landry Fields going into this summer, and you were also considering trading Trae Young, that's probably a situation where you want a new manager, general manager, to make that trade, to just basically say, okay, we can't have the guy we don't really trust anymore to do that trade. We need someone else. So I suspect that everything, outside of a few exceptions, is like open for business in Atlanta.
Yeah, and that's how I would take it too. And it's also just, there's kind of a natural pivot point for them. And also, I do respect, I guess you could argue they even maybe should have done it sooner, but did you want Landry Fields? I know they didn't do anything super nuclear at the deadline, but you traded DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic. You don't want Landry Fields heading up this draft process or like free agency plans, however you plan to go about that. Trae Young, extension eligible this summer, could sign. It'll be a 4-year, $228.6 million max. I would have assumed that they were going to offer it to him. And I think I'll be curious, Wrestler, the owners, is it going to be a stipulation that the next executive needs to keep Trae Young because they still have some of those that future. So this year's pick, okay, already going to San Antonio, but you kind of have control. What is it? 2027. And then the swap rights next year. So your next 2 first-round picks are owed to San Antonio. Are you going to give the next executive the latitude to say, hey, if I want to tear it down and trade Trae Young over these next 2 years, or even just the next year? I'm just curious as to whether that person's going to have the freedom to do it. But it is, regardless, just because he is extension eligible, you have kind of reached a natural pivot point, I would think. Yep. Do you think if you were coming in,
yes,
what is your pitch here? Is it, we're going to strip it down, we're going to trade Trae Young and kind of rebuild around Jalen Johnson, Reese Shea, and Dyson Daniels? Is it, and by the way, that's the other thing that goes into all this. They have other free agents like Nance, LeVert, Capella are all free agents. I think LeVert's clearly the most important one of those three. Dyson Daniels is extension eligible now, coming off a 3rd season in which he's probably going to finish, or he will finish. We got the confirmation he's top 3 in most improved player voting and will be mentioned on the all defense discussion as well.
Yep.
A lot of just maybe not a lot, but I would say two pretty significant decisions coming in just with the Daniels extension and the Trae Young is extension and just future with the team.
I mean, to answer your question, yes, I would absolutely come in here and make the pitch of, well, size, because size, again, is so important in the NBA. We've seen like a return to size. When you have a 6'8", combo guard averaging 3 steals per game, you have a 6'10" power forward who's lanky, athletic, who can play make. Now you have a 6'9".
Can't stay healthy though.
That's right. So that's not. Let's put a pin in that for later on, because that's going to be relevant. But like that, still when healthy, Jalen Johnson is amazing. So you have like great positional size at the. If we want to label Dyson Daniels a 2, let's do that. Like the 2, 3, 4. You don't really have a big center. I love Onyeka Okongwu. You know that. I've been talking him up for years, but 6'8" centers usually don't really fare all that well unless they're basically Al Horford. And if memory serves, Horford is actually like 6'10", now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be shocked if they're looking at that draft pick disadvantage and going, okay, how can we replenish our cupboards a little bit? Well, that means Trae Young. Now, that's a huge loss, so you can't just go out and get draft picks. You're also, because not a lot of teams have cap space, so you're going to have to take some money back.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably, that type of money would be attached to a player who can come in and participate right off the bat and would help aid that, the big defensive lineup that they seem to be brewing. What I like about that deal, though, or not that deal, with that scenario, that vision, is Zachary Richardson looks like he will be pretty decent offensively as well. We know Jalen Johnson can produce offensively. Dyson Daniels very much improved offensively this year as well. So, like, they have these 3 guys who can actually play both sides of the floor. That is somewhat atypical for teams that are trying to rebuild a little bit. Usually you have like a one-way player, and then you have a couple players who you don't really know. Like, is this guy going to struggle defensively? Is he going to be only like 50% defense, 100% offense? Like, what are we looking at here? Here you have 3 guys who you just know, okay, we're going to play balls to the wall, both sides of the floor. That's pretty huge, because it kind of allows you to say, all right, since we don't control our own draft picks, but via trading Trae Young, we will control other draft picks, we can actually focus on winning, because we don't have to tank. If we're in the control of other people's draft picks, that gives us all the incentive in the world to try to win and be competitive. It's basically the best of both worlds, and I think that's the pitch.
Yeah, I would allow the next person to go that direction if they pitch it adequately.
Yeah.
Like, I would allow it to be on the table, but I kind of also look at Trae Young and I'm wondering, all right, he's 1 year out from a player option. You don't trade for Trae Young unless you know you're going to keep him. I still don't have the team that's going to come in and give you a best of both worlds kind of package to me. And I think that's probably more problematic. I would think, look, if you were asking me, do you want to trade for Trae Young or John Moran? If it was between those two, I'm probably higher on Trae Young at the moment.
Yep.
But like, I don't know, is that a super high bar to clear right now? And so I look at teams that might be in the market for, like, I don't think he's an Orlando player because of the expense and just the amount of, I know he's gotten a little better away from the ball, but just the number of possessions that need to be allocated to him. And I still can't get around. I'm not saying they should go balls to the wall and try and win a championship and double down and trade more first round picks. But not having control over your next 2 first round picks does give me some unease. I've even wondered, could you get one or both of your own first? Like, would San Antonio do that for Jalen Johnson?
Oh, for Jalen. I'm sorry. I thought you were lining up a Trae Young deal here. Yeah. Okay. So that's actually very interesting. Like, Jalen Johnson would be probably one of the best fits along with Wemby that you can find at the 4. That's interesting.
I don't know. I actually don't love the fit just because he's not a good shooter. He's dynamic, but I would prefer someone to be a better shooter. I know Wemby's shooting kind of, and he's been playing with Jeremy Sohan, but I'm not saying it's a bad fit. I just don't think it's the ideal fit necessarily.
Sir, a playmaking 4 playing with an inside-outside 7'4" guy who's like the total unicorn. Defensively alone, it's like, oh my God, the potential is ridiculous.
I also think Jalen Johnson is more of a malleable defender than a good defender too. He could be moved around
All right,
positionally, but
all
he's
right. The
not.
penny drops. Fair enough. That's what I see. Okay. See, I'm not there. I love his defense. I think he individually
I
is
might
good.
even do it. I'm just so if you were the
Yeah.
Spurs, would you give Atlanta one or I don't even if I'm Atlanta, I'm not saying I even necessarily is that enough just to you would want other stuff too, I'd assume.
Right. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, again, we're not dealing with Nico Harrison here, so we'll have to be realistic, right? What is a good Hawks Spurs trade? Like, if the object is to get how many, like, first order of business, how many draft picks do you want back that you previously controlled? Like, what
I
do you
think if
want
you're the
this year?
Hawks and you're trading Jalen Johnson, you probably want like
All of
both as
them,
the starter. Like we want
right?
those
Like,
swap right back and we want 2027 back as well.
oh, this so you're not thinking this year? You're not thinking 2025 and
Oh,
26?
fuck, I didn't even think of that too. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you would want another prospect to rebuild, and I know they might have the Kings first round pick this year. They also don't they have another first round pick coming out of that DeJounte Murray trade down the line? But you would want, even if you maybe have to give up one of the lesser favorable ones, I
Right.
would for sure if you get your own draft pick back. But I think I'd be focused more so on because in theory, if you're trading Jalen Johnson and then going to trade Trae Young, the next two first round picks are going to be more valuable than
Right.
this one. Yes, they
It's
have the
super
Lakers
interesting.
first rounder this year.
Yeah.
They might have the Kings if it's outside the top 12. So, I mean, their first round pick it'll be maybe better than they're not going to have their own first round pick. Excuse me. So I guess, but it could be better or right in line with Sacramento's. I'd be focused on getting 2026 and 2027 back. And you
It's
have,
interesting. Yeah.
I guess if you really wanted, the Spurs do have like something around Sohan and Barnes and those picks. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the Spurs might say, I'm sure some Spurs fans would prefer Sohan to Jalen Johnson, if only because of the price right now, anyway, and the health concerns, of course, with Johnson. But he's a much better shooter than Sohan is, and
Yes.
so you put him next to Wemby. I think the fit would be great. I don't know. There are probably other fours I'd prefer. I just don't. It's an interesting exercise for me because as the Hawks, like the starting point for me is I need both of those, like control those picks back plus other stuff. And if I'm the Spurs, if you think the Hawks are going to blow it up anyway and
Yeah.
trade Trae Young, not necessarily Jalen Johnson, there is a chance that at least next year's pick, like having those swap rights could be pretty juicy.
Keldon Johnson and Harrison Barnes for Jalen Johnson kind of works in the offseason, doesn't it?
And that seems like the right salary structure for sure.
It actually might be a little too much now that I look at it. It's like 36.5, and Jalen's at 30 even, right? So,
Yeah, but I think both teams will have enough wiggle room under the aprons for that not to be an issue.
Yeah. And then look, if that's a big issue, like
Atlanta could send out a smaller salary, or excuse me.
You can add Kobe Buffkin, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would work.
I'm just curious if you're the Spurs, do you think it's it's probably an equally hard question. I think for Hawks fans, they might just say, no, we're not trading Jalen Johnson. But
right.
if you're just rebuilding, I mean, if you believe it's him, Daniels, and Ricochet, sure. You also don't want to get yourself locked into, well, we're like losing, not a lot, but not winning enough, and also not losing enough. And then where are we drafting after this? At the same time, if you're not, I will say, I'm not moving Johnson. It'd be a non-starter to someone else. You'd have to overwhelm the Hawks because the appeal is those picks. That's San Antonio. I'm only looking at this from the Spurs perspective, not the rest of the league.
But like you'd have to follow it up. Like if you go that route and you actually pivot off Jalen Johnson, it would almost necessitate a Trae Young deal where you get the picks back that you control yourself, but then you trade Trae to get all of the outside picks as well.
Yeah.
Just you'd have to load up because, oh my God, their offense would just be garbage next year if they went that route. Like, I don't even know who they could.
Well, if you have your picks, that works out then, doesn't it? You get to
Yeah.
explore kind of the depths of Ricochet and Dyson Daniels.
Dyson Daniels is going to shoot like 37% from the field, but you know what?
Or average like 12 assists a game, or they just put the ball in his hands and make him the de facto point guard all the time.
I don't even dare think about how many turnovers if he's going to be tasked with 12.
Will he force more or commit more? That'll be the...
That is fair. Look, that's interesting because like a lot of the conversation around the Spurs, Hawks, like have always been Trae Young, right? But then they got De'Aaron Fox and it was like, no, well, that kind of died. If you think about it, like a core of Wemby, Jalen Johnson, De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, that is filthy. That is filthy. I even forgot Vassell. Like you could just throw Vassell in there.
Yeah, I mean, you would need him and his shoot with that. Just like you have a lot of questionable shooters in
what I
that
mean, I
core.
throw him
Yeah.
into the rotation. I mean,
Yeah.
but like that's a filthy roster.
It would be if the big moves that the Spurs end up making are for two guys in De'Aaron Fox and Jalen Johnson that you can consider below league average shooters, I'd have some questions. That's all. But it would I'd be high on the fit, but it would just be like, they probably still have enough left over to go get a Cam Johnson or somebody, but then it's like, well, what are we just burning through all our assets right now? Well, Wemby's still on this side of 22 or whatever it is. I just think it's an interesting thought exercise. What is, if they're not going to move Trae Young though? Is there a way for them to kind of like, isn't that also just on the table? Where it's if Trae Young's willing to sign the extension, we're just going to keep him and we're just going to try to we're not going to triple down and do something reckless, but we have Ricochet, we have Daniels, we're going to have some other prospects coming in here. You continue to develop Jalen Johnson. I might focus on, and I actually don't have a problem with them if you don't control your own first round picks. This might be the most palatable direction for me, is just go out there, try and upgrade the center rotation and like just see what you could do. Maybe you probably want some more shooting or secondary ball handling in here overall, especially if Karis LeVert's leaving. But I don't think this is like I don't want to say it's a desirable spot to be in. They clearly need to sort of pick a direction. Maybe I'm just getting too hung up on I guess technically their next 3 picks being out the door. I just feel like that adds a layer of complexity to where if you're going to move Trae Young for not your own picks, which we know at this point you would be, there needs to be a team that's replenishing you with prospects and other picks to an appealing extent. And as of right now, I'll echo again, I don't have the team that I think is going to come in there with that type of an offer. Like with Utah, when they have Collier and George, they might not have the answer, but is Utah going to be hot for Trae Young? I don't think so.
I actually agree with you also that it is palpable to like keep Trae in this situation because you can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to negate the size disadvantage at the 1, right? Mm-hmm. So you have like a jumbo 2, jumbo 3, jumbo 4, and like if you get that center in there who is not Clint Capella, but Clint Capella sized, 6'11", 7 feet, agile, long. Yeah, you might actually be able to make a run in the East. So, like, what we're looking at is really Dyson Daniel and Zachary Ricochet, obviously young players. What I think Atlanta could be hoping for is just waiting it out a little bit because obviously year 1 Ricochet is not who you want to pair Trae Young with. You want to pair him with year 3 Ricochet. And for Dyson Daniels, it's year 5 Dyson Daniels. So, like, if they have some patience and they want to see this thing through, I have no issues with that whatsoever. It's interesting because they do seem to have a lot of options for him. I mean, they have both Capella and LeVert coming off the books. Like, yeah, you would probably make it a pretty big effort in getting LeVert back. Larry Nance also coming off the books. Like, you have
they're 40. I think they're like $41 million under the tax as of right now, too.
Right. You can probably pivot off Terrence Mann pretty easily as well. Like that shouldn't be a problem, especially now the teams can, if I'm understanding it correctly, right? Like they can trade for a contract into their non-tax MLE.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there a team out there that'd be willing to give him that? Well, okay, he's earning actually $15.5 million. Is that just over?
Yeah, I think the non-tax is like 15 this coming year.
Ah, right. All right. Yeah. That's a little tricky.
I don't think he's immovable anyway, though. I don't know if that extension is severely above water, but it's not severely underwater either.
Oh, yeah. No. I'm not saying he's untrue. It was more like if you wanted to clear cap space, like immediate cap space, that's probably a little bit rougher because right now only Brooklyn is projected to have like real space. And
yeah, they are the only. Detroit can get to like north of 20, but it's would you rather have 20 million and no chance of keeping THJ and Malik Beasley, or would you rather have a chance, like let's retain their rights, even Malik Beasley's non-bird, and then we can spend the non-taxpayer mid-level, which is 14, 15 on its own anyway. I mean, I guess if you need the cap space to keep Malik Beasley on his own, he's become super important. But yeah, point being, yeah, you're right. There's only the Nets, which is going to be fascinating about a team we're going to talk about in a little bit. Yeah, Atlanta, though, I don't have an issue with this decision, but I don't know. I just wonder what they view like Landry Fields' cardinal sin as. Is it the DeJounte Murray trade, in which case I didn't think that they got great value for it. It was a lot to give up, but I was supportive of what they were trying to do. It was definitely a miss.
Same.
I am curious if that's just what they're looking at, or I think the change itself could signal, oh, maybe they are open to the more nuclear options that are out there, and they
Right.
want someone new leading it.
Do you think if they hadn't lost both Dejounte Murray trades, it would have been better? Because they lost both.
Well, they didn't lose as of right now. They didn't lose the second DeJounte Murray trade. They look like with Dyson Daniels and what.
Right. Okay, that's fair. But like you have to look at in the moment as well, just in terms of like gauging trade value, right? Like I hear you. Like Dyson Daniels turned in fantastic, but like at that time, while he was never a throw-in, no one expected this.
Oh
Like,
no, it's
that's
the
kind
same.
of thing.
It's the same reason for people criticizing the Pelicans for giving up on Daniels. It was, I mean, maybe they didn't give him a viable shot, but the primary personnel that was there was never going to be conducive to Dyson Daniels doing what he was doing in Atlanta. And by the way, he was never once doing in New Orleans what he was doing in Atlanta. So like, he had the floater in the defense, but it wasn't like he did not look like a defensive player of the year type player. So
I was
I
so
get
wrong on him. I was high on him coming into the draft. Then I was low on him after 2 years because I thought, oh my God, the offense is just so bad. He's going to be like at best a Matisse Thybulle. And then he just gave me the middle finger this year. And I'm so happy that he did. Thank you, Dyson.
But even for him, I would like to see this, like Risache being there. Okay, good. And I think Johnson, like, okay, space the floor. They do need, though, you're not looking at this, especially with Bogdanovich and Hunter now gone. This isn't a roster that has a ton of great spacing. And so if you want to kind of maximize Daniels and even Trey, I think you're going to need to make that a priority in addition to, all right, we need like kind of a different type of center anchor as good as Onyeka Okongwu is. Overall, though, no issues with this other than I'm just curious as to what it, like, I don't like the Hawks direction wasn't clear beforehand, I don't think. And this move doesn't clarify it for me either way, other than the belief that, oh, okay, maybe ownership is more open to tearing it down and starting over.
Yeah.
Next on the agenda, this is interesting. John, we are going to talk about a playoff team. Excuse me. The Golden State Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga. So per Stein and Jake Fisher over at the Stein line, people around the league believe the Dubs will look for Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade this summer when he's a restricted free agent. He is not. He was like on the, I don't want to say the fringes because he was playing, but he closed the regular season with his rotation spot not looking great. Steve Kerr's not happy with his fit alongside Jimmy Butler. That makes sense. The Warriors are minus 7.1 per 100 when they share the court together. The shooting has been awful. The defense hasn't been great. The Dubs in general, per Stein and Fisher, are apparently not happy with JK's lack of playmaking development. And he did not play, notably, maybe I'm burying the lead here, he did not play in the Game 1 win over the Rockets. And so it's, is he even part of the Dubs' playoff rotation? Like, at all? So, Mort, what do you make of this Jonathan Kuminga stance? And just look at how, like, they had an offer reportedly per The Athletic was like $30 million or something per year at, like, leading into the season. They seem to have gotten lucky that he didn't sign it. And if he did turn down anything in that ballpark, I don't know who's giving him that type of money this summer, even as part of a sign-in trade.
I am Jack's complete lack of surprise on this one because it feels like this has been brewing for a while. Like even before, I was actually surprised last year when there were rumblings about an extension because it felt pretty apparent that those two sides were not exactly in love with one another. So what I was expecting, honestly, was him to get traded before the trade deadline. I thought they would want to get rid of that deal while it just accounted 1-to-1 on the trade field. For them to go into this summer knowing that his contract is going to be a problem just in terms of like matching and sign-in trades are difficult as hell to pull off now that they hard cap you. And I don't envy their situation right now, and I don't envy his situation right now. He was hoping to cash in. Like no one here is happy. So yes, of course he's going to move on. It's going to be interesting to see how. Perhaps it's going to be no market, like really to the point where they just like, all right, fuck it, let's extend, and let's just kind of move you later on. Because if they extend or not, that's not an extension. Let's get.
That's not what I was. I promise that's not what I was going to say.
Right. I just wanted to say it because the reason I pointed out is if you do give him a new contract from day one, that is the outgoing number of money. Like it's that counts.
You just have, but you then have to hope that contract is movable. So if you give Jonathan Kuminga, I know it's a smaller percentage of the salary cap, but is $20 million a year. You don't, it's the same
You can
logic
squeeze
with,
him. He's
what's
a
that?
free. You can squeeze him. He's a restricted free agent.
How often do we see teams actually do that, though? It's why everyone's scared about what the Bulls are going to pay Josh Giddey.
Well, the Bulls paid Kobe White $36 million.
Look, if
over
they
3
squeeze,
years.
because the market, you mentioned this before, the Nets are the only team that's going to have cap space. They might be a team that could have interest in him, but it's not. 30 million is just would be absurd for him. And maybe if it's a 2-year deal or something, but if you're the Warriors, you probably have to match that. You have some, I think they're like 25 million beneath the first apron, or is it the tax next year? Either way, like, so you don't have to worry about, oh, is he going to become prohibitively expensive when your roster? Yeah, you have 17.4 million under the tax. I would think at this point, like in theory, I'm not even giving him like more than 17 million a year. So you could soak up that space, then maybe the deal ages better. But like, you need him to still be movable, because you're already admitting, not you, the Warriors are admitting that, oh, this isn't the best spot for him anymore while Jimmy Butler's here. So why is he going to get better on his next deal if you don't trust him to develop as a playmaker, a rebounder, a defender right now? And the sign and trade could be fascinating, because the base year compensation rule, like, the Warriors have enough space beneath the tax, I guess, that some of it could work. But depending on how much he gets, let's say he signs for 20 million. Just for, I know you know what BYC is. If he signs a $20 million per year deal, the Warriors are only trading him as a $10 million player.
Yep.
The other team is acquiring him as a $20 million player. That becomes harder to work out even in the offseason, when there's not a ton of teams with cap space to say, oh, like, we have $10 million in cap space to offset the differential. And even if you do, what are the Warriors getting back? Is the other. It's like, what are you willing to accept for him? So do you end up, even in a sign and trade, moving him for basically nothing? A shorter is it even a helpful player? I think you hit it on the head when you said, I don't envy the spot they've come in with this. They probably, I know Kuminga had some highs before he got injured this year, but they missed the boat on getting anywhere near peak value for him. And I'd be very curious to see, forget about the money, but like, what is the interest level? What is a team willing to give you for Jonathan Kuminga? And if it's not out there, the decision gets really tough. Is, well, do we just pay him and hope that the contract ages better? And I would just caution anyone who says the cap is going up, you throw him into a trade, you need matching salary. I get it. I keep coming back to, this is just the most recent example, and I don't think he's a bad player, the Obi Toppin deal. Like, no one wants another 3 years of that. It's not a detrimental contract, but when salary matching tool, when you sign someone to be a salary matcher, but you give them 3 or 4 years, it's a lot different than the Bruce Brown, where the Pacers gave him the 1+1. That was team control on that latter year.
Question. Are we undervaluing him and his market considering his age? Like, it feels like he's been around forever because he's been a topic forever. He's only 22 years old. He's obviously producing, especially offensively. Like, his per minute scoring numbers have always been very high. He's had 3 years, not including this one though, where he's been fairly efficient, at least around the basket from 2. Like, there is some interior juice to be squeezed there. Are we underestimating, like, how some teams could be looking at him?
Yes, I'm sure we are. I just don't. I will think, or I do believe, excuse me, that front offices also kind of have to look, unless you want him to be the dude, like, you have to question, well, how does he fit as part of a larger ecosystem? Because they're worried about him fitting in alongside Jimmy Butler. And that kind of is like, I know Jimmy Butler, okay, his own floor spacing, like, that can be an issue, but that's not, can he play with Jim? Like, that's not a great spot for Jonathan Kuminga to be in. And it's the same questions we've had all along, where it's, if he's not going to be more of a passer, if he's not going to be a higher volume or more efficient 3-point shooter. And I'm sure we'll see, like, if you want to put in the comment section or Discord, like, oh, over the past X games or this stretch, I'm looking at this through an entire season lens, through a multi-year lens. And so I'm probably lower on him than consensus. I would agree with you that maybe we're not looking at this from a lot of other teams, but let's even throw assets and cap flexibility out the window. What is the team that wants to just come here and, like, he could be semi-interesting in Brooklyn? That gets fascinating though, because if you're Brooklyn and you really want him, why do you want to do a sign and trade with the Warriors if you just had the money to sign him outright? Wouldn't you rather try and poach him? And if it's a no, then you've just added on to the Warriors books. Like, we've seen Sean Marks do that in the past with other free agents. He could make sense in Brooklyn though. I don't know where else I would really like to, just, if you told me the bigger thing is that he would shoot like 5 threes a game and hit them at a 36% clip, I'd come up with a big list for you. But because I don't know that he can do that, I don't know which teams would be that interested in him.
Okay. So there might be one, and it's only because Patrick Williams has been so disappointing. But that's probably no. I'm not even kidding here.
Are you sending Pat Williams back to Golden State?
Well, so think about this. Pat isn't necessarily a guy who fits in with this Chicago Bulls team. He doesn't really attack the rim all that much. The Bulls aren't necessarily the best developmental plays. If you're the Warriors, like you could probably even squeeze more out of this whole thing if you were to somehow engage in some sort, not now, no, not in the summer, but maybe like next year's trade deadline. Kuminga, Patrick Williams, something, because Pat at the very least can still space the floor at a higher degree than Jonathan Kuminga. This we agree on.
Sure. Do you want maybe Kuminga there with Modest Buzelis though? Is that?
That's where it gets tricky, right? Because I think Buzelis is a better shooter than what his reputation is. He dramatically improved this year. I think he was so much better as a shooter than we all thought he would be. The question is it sustainable? Because we've only seen like 1 year. We have 1 year of data for Masas Buzelis. That's what we have. We don't know more than that. So that's why I'm also saying, look, next year's trade deadline. So like Dubs, keep him for now at a reasonable deal. Also, so you avoid the base year compensation, just keep him, then figure it out at the trade deadline next year. But that would at least be interesting to me. I mean, I do think that is a team that could use a little bit more athletic rim running juice than what they have. I mean, yes, Buzelis does that, but who else really does that?
No, I mean, maybe you could just downsize and play them together without Vooch in those lineups. So look, you could work. I don't know if the Warriors want you. You could figure out a sign and trade with Kuminga that brings back Vooch. Is that enough? Are you? And then if I'm the Bulls, like if that's what it's costing, I'm not giving up a first round pick but is that enough? We're moving Jonathan Kuminga for Vooch?
I have no idea. That was considered at one point, not necessarily, but that was rumored. I think like that was a thing that came out before the deadline, where because obviously the Vooch rumors to Chicago were apparent, and Kuminga's name came up a couple times, but I'm not sure if it was like in super serious like capacity or whatnot. But it did come up here and there. I do think that the lines of communication there are open. I also think the Warriors would be motivated to make a deal. Like, look, let's be real about this. There's a reason why the Spurs and the Kings went back to the Bulls during the trade. No, I mean, look, they saw it.
That's your ethos. I respect it.
Oh, well, I mean, it's not wrong. It's not wrong. They went back to that well because they tried it before. The water tasted good, and they could squeeze it once more, and they did, and it worked. So, like, I mean,
I love you, Mort. I love you.
Likewise, buddy. But like, look, I do think that that's a fair thing. I do think teams call up bad teams and bad managements and go, "Hey, guys, want to talk?" And look, if the Warriors find themselves in a pickle, perhaps the Bulls could be the way to unpickle it. And I do think the Bulls would get a player who could spread his wings a little bit more there than he could in Golden State. So I actually don't think it would be the worst fit in the world. It has to be an offense that's just really geared around threes and where, you don't want to win now, guys.
Right. What about, what could be semi-interesting?
Yes.
Utah for JK. Just because he could fit with Lowry. I mean, if the Warriors want to give up more stuff and get Lowry market in, but that's the money there gets all sorts of. I don't think you could even work it without including Draymond Green as part of it when you're looking at their. So because you have, I don't like unless Utah's going to pay Kuminga the max, and then you throw in Moody and Hield, you could maybe work it. But Utah just not the best fit with Kessler, but because Lowry can shoot the three. The way that Sensabaugh kind of plays, he'd be a terrible fit probably next to Collier right now. But just that's someone who could generate his own shot from multiple levels in theory. And you have, I would say, like you have some lower leverage first round picks still. But like if you're the Warriors, you're probably more focused on getting players back. At the same time, if it's a sign and trade, you might need to settle just given the base year compensation thing. Okay, picks and some modest salary we can reroute into something else later. You did talk me into Chicago being interesting. But the Bulls can't even be like, if you're the Warriors, what do you actually want out of the Bulls?
Right.
Even if it's at the trade deadline, Vooch and Lonzo Ball, I guess like that's kind of interesting, but I don't know then you're waiting on December. And so isn't there a chance that his value goes sideways between now and then?
I mean, yeah, it could be. I mean, honestly, I just don't think the right approach right now, regardless, we're just looking at this from Golden State's perspective. I just don't think the sign and trade is smart in any stretch right now. Just lock him up, even if it's a 2-year deal. I don't give a damn, and then figure it out at the trade deadline instead. Because if you start dealing with sign and trades, you're hard capping yourself. You're putting yourself in handcuffs. It makes no sense.
Well, they should be fine just because it's only the team that acquires the player in the sign and trade that's going to get hard capped.
Well, it depends on what they get back. Like you can do multiple sign and trades, right? Like unless they want someone who's like.
Then you also So right. And the base year compensation makes it so confusing because they are going to take back less money than they're sending out. So you don't have to worry about we're hard capped at this apron necessarily. Right. But you're right that I think logistically a sign and trades, unless it's to Brooklyn, but right now Brooklyn or Detroit is like really the only feasible example. And what are those teams? I don't like Kuminga in Detroit. Like in transition could be kind of fun. If Tobias Harris isn't, but like if you're still invested in Jaden Ivey, you have a Sar Thompson, Ron Holland. I don't want Jonathan Kuminga anywhere near that. So if it's Brooklyn, what do you want? Like Cam Johnson, that might be something, but the Warriors got to be the team probably sending out more in that equation.
That's a lot of spacing to give up for not a lot of spacing.
Yes, per I don't know if you'll get this, but per Grant's proprietary metrics, which he has finally given me access to his database, I can confirm that Mort is right. That is giving up, if you're Brooklyn, a lot of floor spacing for not a lot of floor spacing.
Correct. And that's really the issue. It's funny how the NBA has changed so much now that just one weakness that is perimeter oriented just kind of snowballs you into hell from a trade value perspective.
But I would say, in Jonathan Kuminga's defense, since I know I'm lower on him, he's had some pretty high extended stretches, and then he's not had, and I think it's a majority of his fault, but also the Warriors have not given him like this consistent role. Like he's just been kind of, and injuries have now been a part of that, been twisted around, personnel changes, seeing the ground shift beneath him. So maybe in Brooklyn, just with consistent run, or just on another team with more consistent run, and to, I guess, kind of put a bow on this, this is eye of the beholder stuff. Who says this all the time? Is it Brian Windhorst? It only takes one team. Yep. They set the market. And so there could be a team that comes in here, but I do think, I think the point you made is most salient because of the way the salary cap landscape is this summer. A sign and trade almost feels, if it's not prohibitive, it's super complicated. And if you can make it, I feel like you'll be prioritizing, we don't want this contract on our books. And so you're not accepting as much as maybe you would prefer. Right. And so I'm probably trying to roll the dice and squeeze him in free agency so that, he wanted 30. Did he end up getting 20 or less or something? And then that would ensure that he should never be this tough to move contract. Because if Jonathan Kuminga at 4 years and $100 million, I don't think that's as readily movable if he's playing like the way he closed the season as many people would think it is.
I'm wondering out loud here. Could the Oklahoma City Thunder be trying to squeeze him in there? Like,
could we? No, if they need someone who's either going to be a higher volume shooter or if they want like someone who could generate their own. No, I'm not taking a ball to Jay.
Third big.
No. Get him all the way from Oklahoma City. That team is not perfect, but it's close to it. And Jonathan Kuminga, he's going to come in, maybe butcher their spacing a little bit. Be a little like, could be more of a sort of this.
If he plays with Chet, is he really butchering that spacing?
Okay, is he gonna? Do you trust him to be part of just like the drive and kick stuff with them? Is that something you believe that he could do, or is he gonna monopolize possessions, make them worse?
Maybe you need him to monopolize possessions in the second unit. Maybe you actually need someone who's just constantly active around the rims, who's constantly a lob threat, someone who can come in and sort of be a little bit of an insurance policy.
I hate it.
Knows they have the deals coming out there.
So you're looking at what? You get some combination or only one of Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, or Lou Dort for Jonathan.
It doesn't have to be now, right? I mean, it could be at the trade deadline. Like, it depends on how guys are looking.
I hate it. Still hate it.
Fair enough.
Or
do you hate it because it's the rich getting richer, though?
But I think it's more along the lines of the Oklahoma City making an uncharacteristically bad decision is what I would characterize it as.
It depends on what they're giving up, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're giving up Isaiah, I mean, I really like Isaiah Joe. I'm not
I
gonna
do
lie.
too, but don't go there. I mean, look, that
Well, but why?
really
It depends on the price point because you have the Chet and
right.
J-Dub extensions here, and you have
Yep,
Hartenstein on the books for at least
of
another year.
course.
I don't love it. I thought about Phoenix as they're kind of I don't know what the hell they're doing, but it's I mean, you talk about there has to be like 8 teams involved to try and make
Mhm.
like that salary cap math work. It's I'll be curious to see what his number comes out. I would say the market favors Golden State squeezing him, but we also know it only takes one team and that some teams just don't like even if there doesn't seem like a market out there, like these guys still get paid. And Jonathan Kuminga, to his credit, is a very talented player. Like the physical tools are all there.
All right, last spot. And it's again, I'm not penciling him as a starter or anything, but like, would there be some level of interest from Memphis when it's Triple J at center, where he's a floor spacer, and you have Kuminga in there just kind of roaming around?
Maybe if you think that the Kuminga can also defend because they really need like a wing
Yep,
guy there,
they
even with
do.
Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams, and Jalen Wells, that wrist injury is a bummer.
Right.
I would be worried with what does the rebounding look like? Triple J just had more turnovers than defensive rebounds in game one against the Thunder.
That's the issue. That's always been the issue with Triple J, right? I mean,
It'd be
it's
funny
so
if
hard
so does
to find like a proper landing spot for this guy.
you know what'd be funny is if Memphis cheaps out through all this, and then the Warriors are like it's JK, other salary and stuff, and they're trading for Jaren Jackson Jr. because Memphis doesn't want to foot the bill for his next deal.
Oh yeah,
You can with what he's making right now,
yeah.
you could make that deal work financially.
Oh, easily.
I don't think the
Like,
Warriors would come close to having the best offer though if Jackson was on the table. I'm just saying that if you threw every I don't know if it'd have to be every pick, but like Jonathan Kuminga's salary, you'd have other money to make it work and then picks. If I'm the Warriors, I'm probably you run into a lot of the same issues. But could you imagine Draymond Green and Jaren Jackson Jr. on the same team?
that would be fun. I do think I do have this suspicion that JJJ is kind of reserved for another team in California.
Which one? The Kings? Yeah, I would
I
agree.
was thinking Lakers probably, but fair enough. Yep.
How how are they getting how are the Lakers getting Jaren Jackson Jr.?
How did the Lakers get Luka Doncic?
They don't yeah, but they don't have Anthony Davis, the Luka Doncic trade magnet
No,
to
that is true. No, I'm kidding. I mean, again, so it would have to be one of those situations where like a pick is going to get freed up by July. And if you wait until the trade deadline, you can probably still move some pieces around.
Here's a fun question.
Dalton Connect. Okay. Yep.
Look, you're not getting. I don't think that the. I can't. You can't talk me into Lakers having a viable package for. I'd be shocked if the Grizzlies want to move Jaren Jackson Jr. I'm going to have a lot of questions about where that organization is
Well,
headed.
again, it depends. Like, obviously, it only happens if the Grizzlies and Jaren Jackson are like, nope, like
Because
we're done.
he's going to qualify for the Supermax eligibility. I'd be pretty floored if he doesn't make an All NBA team.
Yeah, but just because he's eligible, do you want to pay him that money?
I probably don't. Um, like that, the full boat of the deal, but you don't have to give the full boat either. And they do have, they could renegotiate and extend him too. They might not even need
Right.
the Supermax eligibility. I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
because we probably, unless you have another team, because it's probably
No, I
time
have
to
a question on that note, by the way, because I do know that you can exceed the 140% on a Supermax, but can you, like, if the player is Supermax eligible? But you said something interesting there. I was under the impression that you can only surpass the 140% veteran extension limits if the guy actually accepts the Supermax, like actually signs the max, that you can't get him at a lower rate. If that's true, that changes the dynamics a little bit.
Well, it didn't the Jazz sign Rudy Gobert to not the Supermax using that same like him qualifying for it. He didn't get the
Oh
full
God, I don't
Supermax.
remember. Okay, interesting. I need to read up on that because then I missed something. Because if you can do that, that changes the name of the game for Memphis dramatically. I was under the assumption you could only exceed the 140% if the guy actually signed the Supermax. And I'm just like, no, you should not sign Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Supermax whatsoever. So that's actually a bit of a lucky break for Memphis if he qualifies, because if they can get him for more money than he's earning now, but below the Supermax, because he's just eligible and that gives them that right, that's a bullet dodged, if you ask me.
That's a really good question, because I was convinced that you could, and now you're making me second guess that. I'll probably have to look that up after. But so
Where is Keith when you need him?
who's more likely to not be on their team at the start of next season, Trae Young or Jonathan Kuminga?
Jonathan Kuminga.
I mean, it makes sense because he's the free agent, but they also
Right.
just had this front office turnover in Atlanta. So
Yeah. Perhaps they get traded or moved on to someone else on the same day, and we'll never know.
or for each other, the Warriors
Or
want
for
Trae
each
Young.
other. Yeah,
I don't
why
think
not?
so.
Yep. Yep.
Our next item that, I mean, I didn't necessarily want to hit this. I'm just tired of talking about this, dude. Nico Harrison had a not so secret press conference this time.
Yeah.
Biggest takeaways from I didn't watch it. I saw the comments coming away from it. He didn't realize Luka Doncic was this important to the Mavs fan base. The plan is also to win enough so that fans forget and understand the logic. Is that even possible? Is my question. And then says critics of the return do not really have a firm hold on the value of Anthony Davis. I don't know where you want to take this. I think it doesn't surprise me that a C-suiter is out of touch with the consumer. So him not understanding how much the fan base was attached to Doncic does not surprise me at all.
None of
My whole thing with the winning, let's say the Mavericks won a title this year. They can't. They're already out. I want to be clear. They can win a title this year. They can win a title next year. And there's just still a chance that they lose that trade because they've shrunk their window. Like Luka Doncic was your ticket. And if he wasn't going to pan out, he still was worth roll. Like he was the dice roll, if insofar as he's even a dice roll of, oh no, this is the next 10 years of our franchise, knowing they're going to be competitive. You don't just based on sheer age, never mind the gap between their talent. You're not going to get that with an Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving window.
Oh God. So you're saying that they might have lost, they might still lose the trade if they actually won a title.
You could say, yes, isn't it? It's unique in the sense that I know a lot of people saying winning a championship means you never have to apologize. And it's, well, I mean, when you comes at the expense of a generational superstar who might win multiple championships down the line, you might have to still.
Sure, but that's theoretical. Here's what I'll say. They would have won the trade from a competitive perspective if they won a championship, but they regardless would still have lost the trade from an emotional perspective because no one, not a single fan, would have preferred winning a title like that. And how you win a title is almost equally as important as actually winning it.
Yes, I do. That's also fair too, because I think there's a lot of, and Kirk Henderson wrote a great piece at this. I think it was at Mavs Moneyball after the trade about not.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just gotta say, Kirk has been slaying it recently. I mean, oh my God, just so good. So his content has been fantastic. He's been so upset, and I love it. Stay upset, Kurt.
And his point was winning with your own guy matters too, and I totally get that. Like, there's a lot of convoluted layers to fandom, and sure, Mavs fans I think would bask in a championship without Luka Doncic, but you're right. It's the reverse logic of KD. I hate talking about legacies, but like KD winning a title with the Warriors doesn't mean the same as if he would have won it in Oklahoma City. And so I'm not trying to get into legacy
LeBron,
stuff like that.
Miami, Cleveland,
right. What means more? LeBron's 2 titles in Miami, his title in Los Angeles, or the 1 title he had in Cleveland? That's not even close. So he missed the mark there. And I take exception to, and you should get into this because you said something before we recorded. The Anthony Davis stuff is no one's saying Anthony Davis is a bad player, that he's not a superstar. He's just, and it's not even about him necessarily being not as good as Luka Doncic. The problem here is that if you were going to trade Luka Doncic, and I want to reiterate that I would not have done so, you don't pivot into an inherently shorter window as the result. There is no player in the league where, I guess short of Jokic, where it would have been worth, because Shea's younger, so that's why I'm not using him as an example. You trade for Jokic, you're probably shortening your window a little bit because he's 30. But you do it because it's Jokic. That was the only player where that type of logic would have made sense to me.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If you were determined to get off of Luka Doncic, all right, fine. That's your right. Like you have his rights. You can trade him. He is trade eligible. for you to trade him for Anthony Davis and only a single first-round draft pick, and I guess Max Christie, but like let's relax on the Max Christie hype. Like that died down pretty soon as well. It's so Nico Harrison said this. If you don't value AD as an all NBA player, an all defensive player, then you're not going to like the trade. We targeted AD, but if you don't like him, then there's nothing else we get that's going to make you excited about the trade. You know what that is? That is throwing Anthony Davis under the bus. That is actually taking your newly acquired superstar and throwing him head first under the largest vehicle that you can find, because you are creating such a warped and false narrative here. Like, look, if this has nothing to do with Anthony Davis, the Mavs fans have no issue with Anthony Davis. When he was introduced, they didn't boo him. They booed the trade when they did boo, and a lot of people clapped out of respect for Anthony Davis. It's not an Anthony Davis issue. I've seen hundreds of Mavs fans basically echo that sentiment and say, look, we love Anthony Davis. We hope he's going to play well, but like, that's not the point. My issue here is you just fail to recognize the trade value of the outgoing piece. And what gets me even more is how Nico Harrison basically said he didn't want anything to leak because that would have hurt negotiations. Dude, if things had leaked, you had gotten a better trade offer than what you ended up accepting. Like, this is negotiation 101, and you utterly failed at it. It is such a preposterously bad, thought-out trade that you can try to spin this as much as you want. And, like, right now he's spinning, like, Anthony Edwards in the post, like an up and down, and he's going nowhere. It's just such a bad way to do this, like throwing every player you basically traded here under the bus and then talking to the fan base as if they're complete fucking idiots. Like, what are you doing? You're alienating the few remaining Mavs fans around right now. It's so bad. It's so bad. It's so bad.
And to your point about leaking it, I understand the thought process of we didn't want it to have this adverse impact on the team. But then, like, when you're kind of in the red zone here of trade talks, that's when you let it leak because you know it's going to come together quickly, and you see if an offer comes in that beats it. I think the issue here was that, and he said this, they lasered in on Anthony Davis. There are reports that they called about Anthony Edwards, and we're not even sure if the Timberwolves knew they were offering Luka Doncic for him.
Correct.
We know they called about Giannis. So it's not like they didn't do any due diligence, but you decided you were going to trade Luka Doncic in the name of improving your championship chances. And that's your short-term championship chances. And that is probably, it's one of the biggest cardinal sins. Like, being out of touch with the fan base would think, and definitely being out of touch with, seems how good Luka Doncic is on the basketball court for sure. But you made the wrong decision. You took the wrong approach from the jump. Not forget about the leak outs. It's you prioritized improving your team in the short term without Luka Doncic. That's counterintuitive beyond measure.
Yep. It all reeks. And quite frankly, it's amazing to me how we also seem to, broader wise, like you and I have talked about it plenty, and like the broader NBA podospheres talked about it plenty. But like nationally, I don't even think it's gotten enough publicity that Quentin Grimes is also balling out in Philly. Like, you have completely lost out on the entire trade deadline, the entire offseason already, more or less. Like, every like positive asset that you had is being appreciated far more elsewhere now than what you had.
Do you think
I don't even know where they go from here? No, sorry.
That's what I was going to ask you is, do you think what's interesting is, I think this is a quote. Do you think Kyrie's going to extend or opt in and extend or decline his player option and sign a new deal because of the injury? Or I don't have any idea either. If I'm the Mavericks, unless he's given me a huge discount, I'm not doing the let him opt in, sure, but I'm not giving him this. He's a little older. He has to come back from a serious injury. I think the bigger question, this does tie into, well, how much do they pay Kyrie if he opts in and extends or opts out? There was the quote, I can't remember where the reporting came from, but a rival executive said there's a desperate GM out there, Nico Harrison. That's good for the rest of us. Do you expect him to try and throw good money after bad, where it's like, oh, I'm going to try in because I'm now tethered to this, that I'm going to now make another. I don't know if it's a controversial decision or just they've been mentioned as would they go after Kevin Durant? Like, do you expect them to try and make more huge splashes, which in the wake of the Kyrie injury, to where his timeline is January or February of next year of him coming back? That's like, well, what is the type of player you're targeting? If you go after a floor general type, what does that mean for Kyrie when you come back? Yeah, he played alongside Luka Doncic. Someone Luka Doncic's size doesn't grow on trees. So you're probably, if you're prioritizing playmaking, you're probably going to be smaller. Do you even have the ammunition to go get a Kevin Durant, who's bigger, but he's not the level of playmaker that you might need?
So to answer your initial question, Nico Harrison is a human being. He's going to feel the pressure. He has literally millions of people who hate him and are calling for his head. There have been more negative articles written about Nico Harrison over the past 2 months than I think he would ever have imagined over the course of his life, over the course of his career. If we're looking at this objectively, every single person who's under duress and under stress, which I have to assume mentally he is, would be terrified of pulling like the next trade. Just be terrified of doing it. So I'm assuming he's going to play it as safe as he possibly can over the next 6 months. And if he goes into the summer guns a-blazing, all right, then I have no idea like what his mental state is, because I just don't think, like, where do you go from here? You don't know the future of Kyrie. By the way, side note, it's Kyrie Irving. He's sort of, an odd guy sometimes. Are we shutting the door on him, basically saying, I'm not going to pick up my player option? Like, this dude plays by his own rules. I'm not saying like
that would be fascinating. Well, because technically working out a sign and trade with him is easier because you're not going to run into the base year compensation issue. Mm-hmm. If there's a team that's like not good right now or not sure whether, and they're like, yeah, we're fine with Kyrie not really being Kyrie next season. That I don't know who that team is, but that would be that. I had not considered that.
But what if Kyrie himself is actually so pissed at how they did things? Like, look, NBA players broadly, and we've seen this online for a long time now with the past couple months, are pissed at how the Mavericks threw Luka under the bus like this. We've seen this. But are we sure that Kyrie is like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm not interested in going into a sign and trade. I'm just gonna decline my player option and sign somewhere else. Like, I'm not even closing the door on that.
I won't close the door, I guess. The chaos agent in me would even root for such a thing.
I am. I officially am.
Kyrie's also a smart businessman when it comes to what he's made with his contract decisions. I would think he has a ton of leverage over the Mavericks because of the Luka Doncic trade. Just knowing even if they pay him less than he had initially wanted, right. I think it's, I can lock down this money now. And the other thing too is we know that he has a pretty good relationship with Nico Harrison, and we know that him and Anthony Davis have wanted to play together.
Correct.
So I think they have that working in the favor. But
do we know that relationship is good though? That's the thing.
I'm sure that would be a more. And if you're, I'm rooting for you to be right now, because that would just be hysterical that he opts out and leaves. I would have felt when you're looking at the cap space climate and the fact that Kyrie isn't going to play until January or February, I would have felt that scenario is way more likely had he never gotten injured.
Right. But
so I'm saying because he got injured, I'd be kind of floored if he wasn't still in Dallas next year, is my point.
No, and look, I agree with you. That's what logic dictates. I am just saying I want to throw that out there.
I really hope that would be. I think even him opting out might catch a lot, and not knowing, okay, they expect like the reporting would be Kyrie Irving has opted out, but it's overwhelmingly expected that he's going to sign a long-term deal with the Mavericks. It would cause a lot of uproar if he just opted out and that wasn't the word. He's like, yeah, he opted out and he's ready to like look around.
Look, you know what? Just be absolute hellfire. Kyrie opts out.
He AD requests a trade.
He opts out and he calls LeBron, he calls Luka, and he goes, remember, like I played for both of you. I know you guys pretty well. I've been linked to the Lakers for a while now. Got the non-tax MLE ready for me for this year.
Who's that? So we're just gonna have
I'll be ready for you and for the playoffs, baby.
I don't. I guess you would have to do that, but then how are you getting a center, Austin? That'd be so weird. I can't. We ventured too far afield here, I
See,
think.
I don't think we I don't think we've gone deep enough because I I would love something like I want this roster to absolutely implode.
Well, what about this this option? What if Memphis decides we're going to
Mhm.
be okay with having like a gap year type, but we want to get out of the John
Right.
Morant business, and they decide that they're really going to juice the odds of next year's pick, and you put John Morant on the table and see if the Mavs would give you Kyrie and maybe other things attached to him.
All right. So it's John Morant, Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson, and Nashi Marshall as your top four.
PJ Washington's
PJ
still there.
Washington. Yeah, I forgot.
I think
I
I
mean,
would hate
look,
that trade for everybody involved.
I would too, but it's not chaos enough, Dan. I want this thing to properly implode. Actually explode in his face, more or less. Just I want this to go bad because the way he handled business this way, the way he just threw a guy under the bus for months on end, and then no, I need all the humor we can find in this. I need the chaos to not end for a while.
Let's move on to another organization that has no idea what it's doing. The New Orleans Pelicans fired David Griffin. They hired Joe Dumars to replace him after an exhaustive search that lasted minutes at least, multiple minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
David Griffin reportedly wanted to fire head coach Willie Green, but Gail Benson's not about that life, apparently. So he did not fire Willie Green, and he got fired himself. Benson said in the internet that she thought long and hard about hiring Joe Dumars, but I guess it was only Joe Dumars because no one else was. It seems like they were even considered or interviewed for this. By the way, mutual friend Schmidt Dua of the In the Know podcast and Substack been killing the reporting and the response to this. So make sure you're Schmidt Dua. Go check Fear the Brown on all his socials, spelled exactly as it sounds. Absolutely killed it with the intel on this one. Other stipulations of this. So we think that Joe Dumars has to keep Willie Green, which I don't actually have a huge problem with Willie Green because of all the injuries that have taken place in New Orleans. I do think that he probably hasn't coaxed enough 3-point volume out of them, even when they're at their best. But it's never, I would argue, it's never a good harbinger when you hire an executive with the stipulation that the head coach in place has to be kept. It's just very rarely. The other part of this is the initial reporting suggested that Dumars would have to trade Zion, that they would have to, that Pelicans, aside from the injuries, are not happy with stuff that's going on off the court. However, this apparently isn't a done deal. Joe Dumars is going to work on his relationship and see where Zion is at. Mort, what do you make of all this? What direction should they go in? And does the draft lottery, is that going to have any impact on what they can or should do?
I mean, yeah. Oh, look, draft lottery results always impacts the direction you're going, in my opinion. Look, if again, it's the Wemby theory, right? Like, even regardless of where you are in your rebuild, if you win a Wemby draft, for example, you start from zero. Like you reset the entire clock. So it depends where the Pelicans are going to land this year. Are they going to be in a position to draft a guy that warrants a reset of the clock? If so, I think it's easier to swallow trading a Zion Williamson and basically saying, all right, we're just going to start all over again. And that might tire out the fan base a little bit, justifiably so, but at least they can get behind a young guy who has perhaps all NBA potential or whatever who it is. So yes, I do think lottery results will impact the direction. Absolutely. That said, do we trust that Joe Dumars is the right man for the job? I mean, I know the league loved him in what he did for them for many years. That's cool.
Architect of that Pistons team, and then also the architect of those subsequent Pistons teams.
Right. See, the thing about the 2004 Pistons team is that they were an outlier. I understand and I appreciate that he won that championship with them as the lead architect. But we just have to come to terms with they're constantly brought up as the exception that confirms the rule of you need a superstar to win. Like, that team is the most oddball team of players to potentially ever win a championship. So it's like, what kind of mentality is going to go into this thing with? Is he going to go in thinking, hey, you know what? This is 1989 and defense can still win the championship. even if you're ranked like 25th offensively. Is that the mentality? Is he going to come in with like a new age approach to things? I have no idea. So like, while I'm not out on a Joe Dumars coming in, I do think the search that lasted, seconds at least. Look, I'm just gonna say this, man. I'm just gonna. You and I are buds. I can say this, but like I last in bed longer than they do in this search. Like that's where I am at.
John Hollinger has said this. This is just a farce of an organization at this point. I've typically
Yeah,
given them a little bit more credence, and I think I understood a lot of their vision, and I was higher on them if they could stay at full strength than a lot of other people.
correct.
This is just it's a
Yeah,
sham of an
it's
organization.
it's
Like
ridiculous.
what it really sucks for the fans that are there. And the other thing here too is whatever direction they choose is likely going to
Right,
be the wrong one. And you also know that even if they keep Zion, what is their plan to get better? I guess they bring in their draft pick, and then they're going to hope that I guess DeJounte Murray will eventually get healthy. You get more development from Trey Murphy because this is a team that's going to go spend on acquiring more talent via trade. They have
right,
like 12
right,
million under the luxury tax next year as of now,
right,
and they're not a team that's going to pay the tax. So we kind of know that. And then if you go and you trade Zion, it's you're not trading him at the peak of his value anyway because of the health stuff. Even though when he has been healthy, he's played exceptionally well. And you've also this isn't necessarily their fault if there are off court issues, but people know now that you want to trade him or that his standing there just isn't on firm ground. I just
right.
don't know the team that's good. Like there are a ton of teams that it'd be interesting to see him on. Portland, Utah would be one of them. I actually wouldn't
Yep.
even hate San Antonio. I know I was talking about spacing around Wemby. You could throw him on a bunch of teams and be interesting. Brooklyn, what are you going to get in a Zion trade? And I also like there doesn't because of the way his contract is set up there. I don't think there needs to be a rush to be no, we need to get rid
Correct.
of this guy unless he's
Yep.
submarining the culture of everyone involved somehow. This is more of an organizational issue than anything else to me.
Right. And that is definitely the issue at hand, I think, because yeah, you can talk about all the things that Dumars is going to add, but if you didn't have an exhaustive search, if you didn't go out and play the field and figure out like what direction do we want to go in, it seemed like you had this guy lined up for a long time, which also means that keeping David Griffin around for so long and even having go through a trade deadline
Like
seemed
trade Brandon Ingram. Also, it's just
right,
like that was a not insignificant move. We knew it was
correct.
inevitable, but you had him
Yes.
make that decision. You allowed him to make the DeJounte Murray trade over the
Yep.
summer.
Yep. It's egregious, is what it is. I don't know where the Pelicans go from here. Long story short, I just have
We're a
no idea.
podcast with answers. We have no idea.
Yeah, no, but like again, it depends on the relationship apparently between Dumars and Zion, right? If that goes well, I assume they're not going to make a big deal. I'm assuming they're going to keep him around. Like, what do you do? Then you move stuff around the margins. Can you really do that? Not really. Like, okay, what can you get for Herb Jones? Can you get something that's a substantially better fit in that system? If you can, cool. But do we trust this team to do that? I don't know the answer to that. I'm very underwhelmed by what they've done so far in the offseason. It's just their offseason, just in terms of like the leadership changes. We brought up Willie Green as a guy who could be on the hot seat. It seems like he's safe, which good on Willie. I don't have any
Good for him.
good for him. Like I don't have anything bad to say about Willie Green. Like he's fine. I think that this is gonna I think he's on this team as the head coach in 12 months? Not necessarily, because like you said at the top, when someone comes in with a new managerial team, odds are pretty good that the current coach in hand is not going to stay the course or stay for the rest of his contract. So things are just getting started. I'm looking forward to seeing us having this conversation in 6 months.
I mean, these things can move quickly too, to where it's
Yep.
what if Joe Dumars decides there's a better head coach or wants to hire? Like, I just don't.
Yep.
But I guess he took the job under the guise of Willie Green is going to stay there, so it feels like he'll be there at least to start next season. Will he finish it? Is he going to be there in 26?
But that's so
I
messed up to do those. Like that's why I never like how when teams also promise guys in the draft, like,
yeah.
oh, if you're there, that's just the dumbest thing you can ever do if you ask me. Because like, what if someone slips and that guy's just there and you've made a promise? Like, because if you then break it and go with the guy you actually want, then agents are gonna be absolutely pissed, rightfully so. You're gonna get a very bad reputation amongst in the players' unions as well. It's not gonna go well for you. So, like, if you take on this job, if you're Joe Dumars and the mandate is, oh, you got to keep Willie Green. All right, Mike Malone just became available. You're gonna tell me that Mike Malone wouldn't be interesting to you guys? Like,
Michael,
really?
Mort,
Michael,
Michael.
Michael Malone. Okay, okay.
I don't know.
Officially, yes.
I don't. Michael Malone for a rebuilding roster is not it. So I don't. But like, I don't. I
Well,
don't
maybe
necessarily
not. Maybe not. But like, if you keep Zion, are you then officially rebuilding?
I don't know. I mean, you have. I don't know. I guess the idea would be if you have Zion, the goal should be to be really good,
Mm-hmm.
as long as his health allows, which you can't guarantee.
Correct.
But you also could rebuild. He's not super old, and it's not like what are you committed to right now? I mean, the Herb Jones deal, that's fine. The Trey Murphy deal, still relatively young. DeJounte Murray's not even going to be ready to start next season. I don't know what this team's direction is, and it's tough. It's obviously tough to know how good they could be without seeing what happens in the draft lottery and who they end up with. They're just sort of spinning their wheels, and I think what's most ridiculous if Joe Dumars was hired and had the ability to change the coach or make every decision necessary or decide like apparently he has the license to decide whether they trade Zion Williamson. He should have been given that same license with Willie Green. And if he determined
Correct.
that Willie Green worked or that he was willing to try and make it work, then sure. But to have it be a stipulation, I don't think having to move Zion should have even been, oh, that needs to be a stipulation just because that's going to be dictated by the market. It's if you can't get a good deal for Zion Williamson, you don't just give someone who is as talented as he is away.
Right. Yeah. I think we've set a record on saying I don't know for a team, and it feels fitting, honestly, because I have no clue. The only thing I do know is the Pelicans fans are out on this whole thing. Did you see just the reaction to the Joe Dumars hire? And it's all ugly.
Yeah, I saw it. They were not happy. They don't have a right to be happy. That was just slapdash like shittery right there. I don't know
Right.
what it just comes back to like that's just another there wasn't a real search conducted. It seems like ownership laser in on Dumars a while ago. And if that was the case, then make the decision a while ago. But this is just it's uninspiring. It's just like the best way
I'm
to
feeling a lot.
describe
I
them.
feel like a lot of teams are becoming that now, like lazy and uninspiring. And I wonder what the hell the reason is. Is it just ownership having too much power in respective organizations? I don't know the answer, but I feel like we're seeing so often managerial teams, coaching staffs that come in and it's just everything is half-hearted. It's weird.
Let's move on here since we don't know what they're doing.
Yep.
The Phoenix Suns fired Mike Budenholzer. James Jones needs a new contract. Are they going to give him one? Is Matt Ishbia going to try and install more of his own people? Bradley Beal reportedly could be bought out or waived. If they waive and stretch him at the money he has remaining, they will have $22.2 million in dead money on their books for the next 5 seasons. So through 2029 and 30. It'll be less if you give money back, but how much money is Bradley Beal giving back that's going to substantially like if you want to knock that down $5 million to 17.2, okay, Bradley Beal gave back $25 million. Let's say he's want to do that. $17.2 million in dead money is a lot of money. That's more than the non-taxpayer mid-level is probably going to average over that span. Kevin Durant trade is still considered inevitable. Devin Booker is not going to be traded. He is eligible for a 2-year, $149.8 million extension, which if he signs, that will bring the total value of his contract to 5 years and $321 million. Let's start with the Budenholzer, James Jones, Matt Ishbia of it all. What do you make of just this whole dynamic still, Mort?
It was bad, and it happens. I mean, I am honestly not one to point. Like, Bud had some issues this year. He also made some calls where you're like, "What the hell were you doing?" But I don't think he's a bad coach. I just don't. I think this was just a bad situation for all around. I think they may have not aligned expectations the right way. I think they just had a lot of heads that kind of butted against each other. So like, it didn't work out. It's fine. James Jones in need of a new contract. If I'm at Matt Ishbia, I would probably say, look, James, it's been nice, but it's time.
Which, I'm
Because
sorry, should have been done, I guess, because do you think
a long time
anything that the Suns have done since Matt Ishbia took over, what what transactions scream James Jones on
right,
that based off how he assembled that initial Suns team?
right, yeah,
I don't think I don't know if you can say that this is new ownership syndrome in the Suns case, but I really think that James Jones would not have made the Kevin Durant trade. It was arguable in the time where it's okay, it was Kevin Durant, but like they didn't negotiate any single aspect of. They let Brooklyn dictate all the terms, and that's probably the cardinal sin. It's not the Bradley Beal trade. It's not even necessarily what will be known as the Tumani Kamara trade. Now it's not negotiating harder in the Kevin Durant trade, and just because you understood the logic at the time, with the benefit of hindsight, that's not all that's at play here. It's no, like it was questionable in real time. A lot of people questioned it. Even if you came to the decision, yeah, it might work out because it's Kevin Durant. I just, and then like, I don't know. I'm like, what was the point of even keeping James Jones around if this was the direction you were going to head?
right,
Because I don't think that the way the Suns have conducted themselves, unless maybe he really campaigned for Mike Budenholzer and that was his pick. I don't know. This just doesn't feel like he's had the same level of control anyway since Ishbia took
right.
over. And so what was the point of dragging it out to this
No.
point?
So I would get rid of him too. I would start over, but the problem's at the top. At the end of the day, even if you do replace, like if you fire James Jones and you replace him with someone else, look, if everything goes through Matt Ishbia and also like Isaiah Thomas, that's a thing. He's been a consultant. Then what good are you gonna get here? Like what are you how much are you gonna change for the better? Like genuinely asking.
The thing that's yeah, I don't know how much they're going to change. And I don't necessarily understand the logic of waiving and stretching Bradley Beal because like
No,
17 million
stupid.
in dead, even if it's a part of a buyout, like what would
Yep.
the number be? Like that's just a pure cost cutting move, which is if you want to
Yep.
make sure that you have wiggle room under the second apron. But what does that say about your future? You're not going to get better as part of a Kevin Durant trade. And I think you need to have some type of, I don't want to say uniform, but in aligned mindset to correctly conduct a Kevin Durant trade, because are you going to prioritize the team that might be giving you stabs at the draft pick apple, not your own, of course, unless it's Houston, or players that come back that immediately help Devin Booker? And I will say, I've seen a lot of the Suns need to trade Devin Booker. If it's a matter of they can get their picks back from Houston, I understand if that's presented to them, why you then make that move. But even if it's Houston, you're not getting all your consecutive picks back. It would be
Right.
control over this year's and 27 and 29, basically. So it's not as easy of a decision. Like you would still have these pockets where how bad you are without Devin Booker, because you will be pretty terrible, it's
Yes.
not going to pay off. And then if you're moving him to any other team but Houston, you probably just shouldn't even move him. Like you need to at least like chip away more. Let's try and be competent for another year or two so we can see a light at the end of the tunnel to getting our own draft picks back. I've seen the Devin Booker future framed as binary, and I understand to have that impulse. And if you can get your picks back from Houston, I think it's worth a discussion. But that's not like this isn't a no-brainer decision with Devin Booker specifically because of
Right.
just you have no control over your draft picks moving forward, like none until
Right.
2032.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. To round out the Bradley Beal thing, if I'm Bradley Beal and Phoenix comes to me and like, oh, all right, buyout option, whatever, I'm not giving a cent back. Not giving a cent. Why would I?
Well,
Honestly.
I think if you believe that you can recoup the value and a team's going to throw a like the non-taxpayer mid-level your way, giving up 15 million bucks or something, and you're going to recoup that in 1 year, maybe two, that might be worth it to him. But I don't think he's going to give them 25 million. Even seems like a lot just to chop off $5 million per year off their commitment. I'd probably be shocked if he gives back that much personally.
I just think he should stick it through and just say no. You know what? Like if you want to buy me out, do it for the full amount. Because like again, what has he got to lose here? Like is that contract not going to be available to him when he hits the market? The non-tax MLE?
You're saying no one would give him the non-taxpayer
No, no,
mid-level
I'm
exception?
saying no, no. I'm saying it is going to be available to him. So why like if you want to give up that money because oh you can recoup it, but like Like,
He has
I'm not
more
saying
leverage here than the Suns, but if you want to be on a better team and if you want to be in a better situation, not be somewhere where you've become kind of the scapegoat, really. And
right,
I think
right,
blame's being dispersed. The court, like Mike Budenholzer just lost his job, but like if you want out of this situation so bad, I could see him giving back something. Even if he does, I don't necessarily understand the logic from the Suns' perspective because as
correct.
the Suns, if he's not going to waive his no trade clause, I'd rather just eat the next 2 years of the money rather than have this thing
Correct.
drag out for the next half decade.
I agree. I agree. But and I'm just trying to look at it through Beal's perspective because obviously he has the power to just kind of cancel out his no trade clause if he wants to. Like he doesn't have to trigger his veto, right? He can just say, "Cool," and then I'm out. Thing is, though, his trade value has just torpedoed over the past couple of years. Like so, as a trade option, who the hell takes him?
I think the deal is short enough to where teams would take him. It's will he waive his no trade clause to go there?
But who, Lo? I mean,
Well,
he's
Washington would take him back in a heartbeat, I'm sure. If you're going to give them a
are we
first round
sure
pick,
okay, so if the Wizards actually win the lottery, for example, are we sure that's still the case?
I still would be pretty shocked if they wouldn't take it. If they're because you're going to get something to take on Bradley Beal, and if the Suns' justification is we'd rather he's going to agree to some type of buyout,
Mhm.
we'll waive and stretch him because we don't want to have to give up money, picks to get him off. I don't. That's not compelling enough to me, just because that is
Right.
so far out. You're basically the most charitable way to put it. Be you're just setting fire to the mid-level
Yes.
exception every single year for the next
Yeah.
half
No.
decade.
You and I are fully aligned. They should not do this. This is dumb. So obviously that's what's going to happen.
You think that's how this is going to end? Then is what you're saying.
Look, it's the Suns. I'd be shocked if they actually acted competent.
I don't even know the Kevin Durant stuff too. What do you think they're going to get for him? Will they get? It'll be multiple first round picks or the equivalent, but what does a haul look like for Kevin Durant at this point with 1 year
I've
left on
been
his deal?
Yeah, I've been wondering that as well for a while now, and I'm not sure. Like when we say multiple first, we make it sound so attractive, but like, are they going to get like multiple picks projected to be in the lottery and unprotected? I'm probably disinclined to believe so. Like he's what 37 this year. Are teams really going to go out of their way to relinquish a ton of their future for a guy who also might just kind of say, "Look, I could be leaving in a year. I could be retiring in a year." Like, I don't think so. And like, as good as KD is, and he is very, very good, it's not the prime version. Although his numbers can absolutely fool you here and there, he's not that dude anymore, which is okay. Like he can come in and be like the secondary guy for sure. But you have to have the right circumstances. You have to have the right roster. You have to have him in just the right role. And I'm just looking through this entire league, and only one team really pops up as being the obvious selection, and that's the team he didn't want to go back to. That's the Golden State Warriors. So, like, who else is
Oh, he
out
didn't
there
want to go
where
back there
there's?
because it's mid-season.
Oh, right, true. So it might be open. That's right. Denver, like, if the Nuggets go out there and make a big swing for KD, they're probably going to hurt their depth even more. But oh my god, I want Jokic and KD together. That'd be so fun.
What are you
But
using as the outgoing salary in that?
Michael Porter Jr. and stuff, and that's the issue, right? What is stuff?
You could
Because
trade a first round pick.
yeah,
You would have to trade. I'm assuming Peyton Watson's probably involved in that deal.
Zeke Nashi, I assume
Well,
so as
to get to
well.
the money, you have Saric and Zeke Naji. So the matching, it's probably not. Well, I don't know. That's a pretty big number for what is
Yeah,
Michael Porter Jr. at next season? So he's going to be in the mid 30s. Naji's going to be
I
like
believe so.
around 8, 9. Saric is going to be that'll be the mini MLE type money. I mean, you
Yeah,
could get there.
MPJ is at 38.3.
Oh yeah,
Could
so you could get there then. Naji and Saric would get you just about there, probably
Yep.
at least close.
Yeah, and Sarge is absolutely picking up that player option.
But at that point, so what are I guess if you're Phoenix, you have to like Michael Porter Jr. and then you're getting
Yeah,
a pick, and you have to like
right.
one of Denver's youngsters a lot. I would assume
That's
because
the thing, right? Like it has to make sense for them. But like if that's the best deal that's out there, like because I don't know who is going to break the bank here. I don't know who's going to come up with a Godfather offer for Kevin Durant. I have no idea. What if that offer isn't out there? What if that package from Denver is the best that the Suns can get? Are they going to
So we're saying MPJ, a pick, and Peyton Watson, just as sort of like the baseline.
Baseline, sure, but like let's say it's the best. I'm not, and by the way, I'm not suggesting that KD doesn't have trade value, but like this is a new financial climate, a new financial reality that we're living in. We have no idea. Like maybe 5 teams stand in line to acquire him, maybe none. I have no clue. But if that's the package, what do you do if you're Phoenix? Do you stay put with him, or do you take that package and try to run with that? I don't know the answer to this.
I guess you'd be obligated to take it because what's the alternative? You just want to lose KD for nothing, and you've then turned him into 2 rotation players plus a pick down the line with some upside. You probably have to make that deal.
But it's also the motivations of him, because he outlined pretty thoroughly he wants to be able to choose his next chapter. He want to go out on his way. Like, what if he is, again, disinclined to want to go to a certain destination that might offer them a good package? Then?
I was going to say, do you think Miami can put together a compelling package?
Well, I mean, look, if Khalil Ware is involved, yes. But what were you thinking?
You're at that point though. It's like, oh, we're gonna get Khalil Ware, and then maybe they can't trade a first-round pick as of right now until 2029, and that's assuming that this year's pick will convey because they made the playoffs, so they can't trade a first-round pick until 2029. Would you give up? I guess you have to give up Khalil Ware for Kitty, but so with 2029 first, let's say, and then Khalil Ware plus the money you're getting back is. It's Rozier or it's Duncan Rock, because I'm assuming you don't want to trade Tyler Hero, and you're definitely not trading Bam.
No, you
as part of this.
Bam with KD for sure, yeah.
And I guess you have to throw Jaime Jaquez in there, and then it's, well, what are you left with? It's KD and Haywood Highsmith and Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. What does that look like?
You're left with the same issue as every team when they go all in on these big salary guys who are at the end of their careers. It's a pitiful depth. It's this is the recurring issue that we're seeing again and again and again. And our mutual friend Brian Soporik was on this. He's been on this for years. Like, when you have to like get 3 guys into a salary structure where they're all earning more than 30 million, even with like new caps and increasings and all that, it's just gonna make it brutal to make real upgrades on the bench unless you have like a war chest of draft picks like OKC.
OKC, I might not hate Kevin Durant there. I'm not, depending on what the outgoing money is. It's not going to be J-Dub or Chet.
That would be beautiful. Do we think he'd be interested in going back home?
I don't know. I actually think it's less likely the Thunder would be interested.
Oh yeah, that might be true too.
They're just that team is so good. They just
then it's look 68 wins. I know it's not quite 73, but then Durant would obviously be interested.
At least he would have the reunion element, though. Yeah, but
I had to get that in.
Sorry. Would you, if you're Denver, would it be more palatable, or even if you're Phoenix, more palatable to build something around Jamal Murray instead of Michael Porter Jr.? Like, if it's Jamal Murray in salary, it's just kind of a challenge trade because he's kind of close to what Kevin Durant's making next year.
Oh man, I mean, I wouldn't like that, and it's I'm also
for which team? Both?
No, I wouldn't like that for Denver because I'm a Jamal Murray optimist. I'm gonna, and also he's a guard. They need guard play. Like if you don't have him, you're gonna run the ball even.
They have Jalen Pickett. Okay.
Yes, that is true. They do. No, I honestly think like Murray, KD, Jokic is like the perfect way to distribute. Like if you want to do like a 3 max system and a 3-star system, I think like the lead guard, the primary wing, and a big is the best way to go about it. I wouldn't hate that, but again, Durant is 97,000 years old. Do we trust him to hold up in the playoffs? And then at the same time, do we trust Jamal Murray to hold up in the playoffs, like health-wise?
He's a playoff killer generally, though. That's I count myself a Jamal Murray optimist too. I think he was overrated in certain circles, but people who view his contract as toxic, probably not the best contract given his injury history at this point. But yeah, I don't know what team is going to come. I don't think Houston is. They might be involved, but they're not giving you back everything. And if they do, like, that's it. Like, you've just gotten your draft. And I'm not the money that they're giving you. I guess they're using Van Fleet's money or Jalen Green's money, and I'm not that's not moving me. And if you're keeping Devin Booker, I assume that you want to compete now.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess the move is if you can get back any of your picks from Houston for moving KD, can you try and figure out you can get like another one of your picks back by moving Devin Booker? I don't know, but I understand. I think the Devin Booker stuff has been too simplified down. Oh, they have to move him, and it's similar to Atlanta with Trae Young. I get it, where you could fault them for giving up those picks in the first place, but when you don't have them, it matters. Do you have any other Kevin Durant destinations you wanted to talk? Like, is there any team that's in the playoffs right now where you could see?
Just outside the playoffs. Just because we want to go full chaos agents here. How about a reunion with Kyrie Irving in Dallas, where Anthony Davis said it's a Phoenix? Why not? Let's get nuts.
Why would Nico Harrison would have to have lost his mind at that point?
Oh, he hasn't already.
Have you given any thought?
You can sell it to ownership because ownership are dum-dums. They have no idea what's going on. Oh, this Luka Doncic guy is good? That's what you're telling me? Oh my God. I mean, look, you can sell it.
The two teams I keep an eye on, just depending on how they fare in the playoffs and when they get bounced, I think Minnesota or the Knicks could end up being just interesting teams that loop themselves in here. I just think a lot rides on it, how the playoffs finish for them.
Anthony Davis would be the driving force behind that for sure. He would love it. He would absolutely love that. Yeah, that's a good shout. The Knicks. Oh, that's interesting. Who are you giving up?
So I've seen a lot of people propose like the Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby type framework, and I think I'm trying to build something around Karl Anthony Towns instead. If I'm New York, I think if you're
big?
What's that?
Who's your big? Mitchell Robinson?
Well, I think you can ask that same question now. Look, Karl Anthony Towns played well at the end of, and this will be coming out after game 2. He played well defensively at points for game 1. He also had some really bad moments where he was getting burned in the pick and roll. And I do believe it's going to be a top or near the top of the to-do list this summer for the Knicks to go out and get another big. I think Karl Anthony Towns is a great player, but if you can move Karl Anthony Towns to get Kevin Durant, you've probably made your defense better, and you can approximate center play for cheaper than for someone that's something like Kevin Durant does. And that would be, I don't know if that's enough. Are we talking third or fourth team here where you're sending Karl Anthony Towns somewhere? They're sending stuff to Phoenix. But if the Knicks get bounced.
Are we all in on Josh Hart averaging 14 boards next year then?
Maybe you move him to get your big, to try and get a big after getting Kevin Durant.
Moving Josh Hart. Oh my God, that is slanderous. Okay.
I mean, it might be, but they already did break up the Villanova crew after assembling it. So maybe they would consider it.
Why am I still upset about that? Like, it's been so long, and that commercial that came out some time ago, the AT&T commercial, I don't know if you saw, that got to me. I was like, damn.
I could see. I would be curious if that's the. Would you you think New York should be trying to move Mikal Bridges in that instance rather than? You can't move OG. He's become your second most important player.
Oh yeah, no. I'm thinking Bridges for sure. I'm also a Towns optimist. I'll admit as much. And I also you know me. I put a bigger emphasis on offensive production than defense. So like that's probably me.
If you actually had the choice, so we're kind of throwing Phoenix's side of the equation out of here. If you were the Knicks, you would prefer to move probably Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart to get KD than moving Towns.
Probably yes. And if I somehow could stick with Josh in some capacity, I would do.
Well, I guess you could move Mitch with Mikal. So you could figure it out if you're
sold.
I think I would prefer the Towns route as good as he's been, to be honest.
That's fair.
Next up, and I think this might be finally, the Sacramento Kings are kingsing. Who knew? Kangsing, excuse me. The Kangs are kangsing. Monty McNair was fired. Scott Perry has been hired after yet another exhaustive search by a top-notch organization. Scott Perry can supposedly hire his own head coach. That's fun. But Vivek, Kings owner, is known to like Doug Christie, who was the interim head coach for the rest of the year there. What's that?
So he can't.
Right. Does Perry, though, have the autonomy to choose a new direction for the franchise? Because the reporting coming out, and a lot of this could be post-transaction spin. Apparently, McNair wasn't a big fan of firing Mike Brown or going after DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine. And if that's the case, my God. We also know that Domas Sabonis is expected to contemplate his future with the organization this summer. And of note, too, Keegan Murray. He's going to be extension eligible. where is the? We know it's headed for disaster, but
Mhm.
do you think like the move for the Kings would be they should probably strip it down and start over? If you
Right.
want to keep Keegan Murray, pay him fine, sure, whatever. Still believe if you believe in Devin Carter, sure, whatever. But this seems like a situation where they're going to try and no, like we can re-reg open that window from 2 years ago
Right.
and light the beam all over again. That ship has kind of sailed for
Oh,
I,
light the beam is dead, unfortunately. This we have to kill the beam now, and I say that as a major fan of the beam. We can't justify it anymore. Sorry. Sorry. When they win their first championship. Oh, well, no, wait a second. They have a championship in their belts, right? They have one from way back when they were the Royals, I think. All right. Well, the first time the Sacramento Kings win a championship, then you can light the beam again. Until then, no. No. It's over.
they feel they have they're $20 million beneath the tax heading into the offseason. They have assets and like mid-end salaries that they could move, but I just don't know how you get to like a better point,
Right.
like looking at the organizational health. It seems like a big problem is just going to be the way that Vivek runs things, who he's listening to at any given moment. And then they've traveled after having one of the best feel good stories in the league a couple years ago. They have traveled one of the most curious paths since then. And they've assembled what is a wildly underwhelming roster with very few outs. They have some pick equity from the De'Aaron Fox trade, but I don't even know. I think their biggest issue, and I want to make clear, I had Domas Sabonis on one of my All NBA teams. They need a new best player, and you're
Yes.
not going to be in a position to draft one based off how good / not good you're going to be moving forward. And maybe you have the assets to go out and get one, but do you then have the assets to flesh out the roster
No.
around said player? And if Domas Sabonis, if you put him on the market, the fact that he's under contract probably helps, but I also don't think because he's such a specific fit, I don't know that there's going to be this type of bidding war for him with teams tripping over themselves. He's an incredibly talented player,
He
but it's
is.
also, and look, we did this made up awards from our subs more, and one of them was stars who made the biggest sacrifice. I put him number one. He was off the ball a lot more this year, dealt with two different iterations of the Kings. They bring in DeMar DeRozan, then it's Zach LaVine. So he's not inflexible. But defensively, specifically, the reason that Keegan Murray has had to blossom there, do a lot of the low man stuff, that's because of Sabonis. And that will be taken into account if teams are cobbling together trade packages. It's just I hate not having answers, but like a lot of the teams that we have talked about when it comes to Dallas, when it comes to New Orleans, and even Atlanta, they're in these just aggressively mediocre situations.
Correct.
Without a clear path forward and without like who are the decision makers that you feel most confident in? We exclude the Warriors who we talked about to monitor and react to the future of these teams. It's probably maybe Atlanta, but like of between New Orleans and Sacramento and Dallas being thrown in there. But I honestly don't know. This is. I do think they had other cards that they could have played, and the mistake probably began with the DeMar DeRozan acquisition, which we did not necessarily hammer on this podcast, but it was sort of all right, like you're fixing one need while ignoring or creating others, and that turned out to be exactly the case. And with the De'Aaron Fox trade, you could say they made out well relative to the circumstances, but you also were forced. You, one, contributed to creating those circumstances, and then two, you tried to cater to this middle ground to where could you have gotten more pick equity if Zach LaVine wasn't involved? And if the answer is no, what does that say about Zach LaVine? Like, I just don't. So, like, because if you put Zach LaVine on the trade market, I think he's probably become an underrated player, but I don't think he's someone who nets you a ton on the trade market, as we just saw for what the Bulls got for him as part of that deal.
Which I still think is weird. He's one of the most efficient scorers in all of basketball.
That could be a Bulls thing too. You would be the first to admit that they just didn't properly like go about gauging his value. Like maybe there was a different type of deal on the table that they just eschewed.
I mean, look, everything is possible here. But one of my point is basically when it comes to LaVine, I think he's grotesquely underrated. I love the addition of him in Sacramento, but I hated that it came at the cost of De'Aaron Fox because the idea would have been to pair him with Fox and Sabonis. That would have been fun. I still love the LaVine Sabonis connections. Honestly, I think there's some juice there. But you're right. This has to come down to the stubs. And the funniest thing ever is Ricky O'Donnell, who's the co-host on Cash Considerations. He was like, he's been banging this drum for like solid 2 months now, where he's like, the Bulls are absolutely going to trade for Domantas Sabonis because Arturas Karnisovas is also Lithuanian, and like that whole connection is there. And it took me a while to realize that would mean Vooch, DeMar, and Zach LaVine would be all three of like Bulls West would be created in Sacramento. And if that is just the fact that they have those two guys on the same team speaks to how little they apparently are. And I'm not putting this, by the way, and on Monty McNair, I'm putting this on ownership. That they realized that, look, if that connotation didn't work in Chicago, like why should it work here? Like why would that duo work here? They were separated for 3 months, then they were back together. And this team is extremely uninspiring as of right now. They have some quality pieces. I do think if they trade them off individually, you can get something interesting. But yes, you have to tear this down to the stubs. You have to start over. There's nothing here. Like, look, the whole Sabonis expected to contemplate future this summer is a bit of a farce for one reason. The conclusion we already know. Like, Sabonis is not going to look at this roster and go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm down." Even if he gets like Scott Perry comes in and tells him, "Here's the plan." The plan is going to end in mediocrity. Why would Sabonis sign up for that? Like, what is Scott Perry's going to say? Hey, Domas, so we're planning in 2026 to trade for Victor Wembanyama. Like what?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like what possible realistic plan can he lay out in front of Sabonis that is going to like push the Kings into deep playoff contention?
They would be, if you're going to keep LaVine and Sabonis and you can figure out how to keep Murray and it's just kind of salary and picks going out, they would be a fun Kevin Durant team. Sabonis, KD, LaVine.
That'd be fun.
That'd be interesting.
That'd be fun. It'd be a super short window, but that would at least be a fun window. A very fun window. By the way, I want to admit that I was wrong on DeMar because I actually thought that they would go this route of basically saying, all right, we're going to go back to running, because remember when they had the number one offense that year? I thought they'd basically go 7 seconds or DeMar, which I thought like
or DeMar.
You know, well, I mean, look, there's some merit to that. I think there's some merit to that. And they just didn't. I mean, even when they started running, like DeMar would get the ball and then he would just stop the offense. He would just like, instead of going all the way to the basket, he was just like, all right, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to survey for 4 seconds. Then I'm going to get into like a post up 15 feet away from the basket. It just murdered their entire offensive explosion potential. And I hate to be that guy, but like you're saying Keegan Murray's extension eligible. Sure. I probably would just let him get into the restricted free agency. I don't think he's proven enough at this point. I mean, he's gotten better defensively. That's great. I expected far more from him offensively.
They weren't never set up to give that to him though.
They were. Made it worse. They traded for freaking DeMar DeRozan.
That's my point, though. Yeah. That's on, and I also think as the Kings, if the way restricted free agency works, I would agree with you that teams should just let players reach the market. But as the Kings, you don't have the goodwill built up to potentially damage any pre-existing goodwill you have with Keegan Murray. So that might put you over a barrel here.
But you're still paying off a theoretical potential. Like again, we don't know. I agree with you. His situation wasn't optimal. Absolutely. But that also means we still haven't seen it. We haven't seen long-term proof that he can be, you know, that third guy that we all were hoping he could be. We haven't seen it. So, like, am I sitting here going, oh, yeah, I'd be comfortable paying him $25 to $30 million a year? That's steep.
Well, if you're not comfortable doing that, then you should trade him.
Right. I'm not comfortable doing that right now, though. Like, again, and that's why, like, if year 4, let's say they get rid of DeMar and Murray goes into, like, his final year of this rookie deal and he's going to be a restricted free agent and he blossoms, I'll be willing to pay for that.
Well, and that's the middle ground, right? I don't know what that necessarily looks like, but it's what can you attach to Malik Monk, and or DeMar, and what does that get you? What's the player that could get you? And are you prioritizing, we want a floor general? Like, are they looking at a Trae Young or a John
Right.
Morant if they become available? Is it to, we talked a lot about, can they get a higher end wing in there aside from a Keegan Murray? I don't have it's such a bizarre situation, because if I was them, I would just tear the whole thing down. Keegan Murray up for debate for sure. I would tear the whole thing down and start over, but we know they're not going to do that. And so I just don't, I'm trying to think of just moves that they could make where it kind of salvages this situation where, all right, it costs you some assets, but some are left over. So you need to be reactive and make other moves. What is are you gravitating towards, especially if you're moving DeMar and or Monk? Is it, well, then that needs to be an initiator type of player from the perimeter?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then Trae Young doesn't make a ton of sense, because it's, let's build a worse version of Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns together, I guess, in Sacramento.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least Levine would be there, right? If they're, can you even afford that though? Trae, Levine, Sabonis? I don't think you can, right? That is expensive. We're coming up on like 125 million just for those three. Oof. Okay. No, you need a lead guard. I just don't know who the hell it is. It can't be Malik Monk. But I appreciate what Malik Monk has done over the past few years in terms of improving as a playmaker.
Will Kobe White do it for you?
Yeah, so he's a guy who I think could be fun there. But again,
what other Bills could they get? They want some Lonzo, Patrick Williams in there.
That's the thing. But again, like, I don't want Kobe White there if it's Levine, DeRozan, right? I guess that's going to be the primary three who gets shots, and we've seen that formula before. That's not going to work. Also, I think there's far more positional overlap between Levine and White than we, seem to acknowledge.
At some point, they got to stop bringing in Bulls players too, if we're being honest.
Like that should just be a rule. It's unless it's Matas Bucelos, and then I'm ready to make it.
I thought about Detroit for a minute. If they weren't confident in Duren and they wanted like more half court offense there, and they don't think that Jaden Ivey's the answer, but I don't love that with some of the other players they have.
I do wonder, like, what if the Pelicans are like really aiming for like the middle ground, saying, okay, we want to be more, what's the word? We want to be more healthy. We want to be a little bit more consistent, but we're willing to sacrifice like the top tier potential. It's going to be horrible. Fans are going to hate it, but like right now we're dealing with crap for crap, right? Sabonis for Zion or some iteration.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, I like, but
that's breaking my brain. That's why I'm laughing. That would be
correct. It would be. Yes, it would.
It's interesting. I do think you're knocking down. Zion's like, he's a very good table setter, but he does it in like one way, where Sabonis is going to be more dynamic in that part. As a straight up trade, I think you have to say no as the Kings. But if you were just concerned about, because Zion is still owed money, but you can technically get out of it if you really wanted to. I think New Orleans has to send something else, just because Sabonis, the durability, and is just more proven. And I can't imagine New Orleans attaching something to Zion at this point.
But like, it's just, I think those are the deals that we're looking at. But again, what about move the needle for either?
Do you like Sabonis with Wemby?
No.
Yeah, I don't like him either. I think about the Spurs. I don't have like a lot of other teams that I think would. He could work with Jaren Jackson Jr., but you have Edey there, and you would have to be really not confident in your offense, or maybe you think you're moving. Right. I mean, Ja for Sabonis would be a weird trade. Yeah. That would be a weird trade.
The issue with Sabonis, who I love, is that he's just not a strong rim protector whatsoever. The way you have to build around him is so specific. It's sort of like the Zion issue again. I know you disagree with me on that, but I still think like those guys who are so specific in how they're built, but lack like these very vital elements to become these like MVP level players. They're so difficult to like find the right construction around. I just don't know how you build around or even with a Domantas Sabonis. Like, his talent level is outrageous. He's a triple-double machine. The guy, when given the ball a lot, is going to lead the league in rebounds, going to average 8 assists, and going to give you 20 points. He's going to shoot like 60% from the field. Like, that's ridiculous production. But because he's such a weak rim protector, you're like, oh.
You need to have, you basically need to have the
Yeah.
supporting cast that like Houston or Boston or Oklahoma City has right now.
Or just Jaren Jackson Jr. Just that guy. Or well, you said Wemby, but like the lack of floor spacing for Sabonis, although it's got better, I will give him this.
That would be so interesting if Jaren Jackson Jr. was available, because the Sabonis covers up for his rebounding. Jackson Jr. covers up for a lot of his defensive stuff. But Memphis is you're getting third and fourth teams involved because you don't have anything that helps out Memphis that unless they're doing a full tilt rebuild and you'd probably sending salary and picks elsewhere. So Memphis is getting somebody they want.
But
Kevin Durant, maybe
the short roll. Like if Sabonis ended up in Memphis, the short roll.
Oh, you're saying Sabonis for Jaren Jackson Jr.
Oh, no. I'm saying pair them together, but could you imagine if Sabonis ended up in Memphis with Jaren? Like you have the initial pick and roll of Ja and Domas. Domas obviously a great short roller. Then you have Jaren Jackson Jr. lurking the baseline.
Yeah, so Sabonis has become a good enough shooter to where the spacing with Ja wouldn't be. Yeah. But I still defenses would not care about Jaren. Yeah, I mean you're running the same problem when you play with Clark and Edey too, though. So yeah.
It's rough. Those guys are just they're tough to find something on that.
And I'd be curious if you polled GMs around the league. So Sabonis has like 3 years and $140 million left on his deal after this season. I'd just be curious how that's viewed around the league.
Did you bring up Atlanta? Because we were talking about like they need a center, a big center. Like I know Sabonis is only like 6'11", so he's like not necessarily.
But he's like one of the best rebounders in the NBA.
Correct. So. Yes. Like the interchangeable passing elements from Jalen Johnson and Sabonis would be fun if you add Trey into the mix. The thing is, I just don't know what the deal is. But like a front court of Sabonis, Johnson, and Richardson, I mean, at least you have those two guys who can cover up a ton of his defensive weaknesses down the line as they improve further.
It feels like a ton is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, but yeah.
Okay, I said down the line. I didn't say immediately. The Dyson Daniels, at the very least, is going to be an asset defensively to help him out.
Here's the thing, though, is now who is Atlanta? If you want all these players around Sabonis and Trey, who's Atlanta sending out?
Yeah, and that's because they don't have their picks. They don't
have their. I mean, they have like the Lakers pick. They have others pick. They give the Kings back their pick. Technically,
yeah,
the Kings might keep it.
And that's the issue. This is why the Atlanta Hawks were also on this list. Like I know it's basically a new stuff, but at the same time, they are firing their general manager for a reason. I mean, all of these teams that we talked about are just they're so stuck, Dan. They're so stuck. I mean,
it's funny because they're stuck in their own way, if that makes any sense, because they do have outs, but for the Hawks, yes, and even the Suns, like they've complicated it because of their pick commitments, but like the Suns are just screwed. Like they're just screwed. Right. All these other teams have options, but they have not, like, you don't trust them to make the right decision. And there's other complications like with Atlanta where it's, and with Sabonis, our best players are this. They are all NBA caliber players, but they're not universally scalable. And that makes it difficult to not just trade them if you wanted to start over, or at least I shouldn't say difficult in a vacuum, but it makes it harder than if the Celtics want to move on from Jaylen Brown. It's just easier to find the top level packages than if it's one of these two, but also just building around them because you could say, okay, Sabonis in Atlanta, Sabonis and Trey would be a defensive disaster together. Yep. So I don't know what the Kings do, but I'm assuming they're not going to rebuild, even though they're going
to do what Vivek wants to do. And that's a problem in and of itself, because that is where the real issue lies. It's with ownership, as is becoming the case more and more with the NBA.
I have decided I'd do nasty things to see Sabonis, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Keegan Murray on the same team, though.
Yeah, okay. So Jaren Jackson Jr. to Sacramento.
That's what I was saying. What if the Grizzlies don't want to pay Jaren Jackson Jr.? And by the way, for anyone who's still listening to that, I did confirm you don't need to sign for this full supermax, because Rudy Gobert, his supermax was 5 and 228, and he signed for like 5 and 205.
So all right. So you just have to be eligible, and then you can sign for basically whatever is kind of.
Right, or I guess at least anything between the 30% and 35%.
That's max. Super interesting for in very. Well, it's super interesting for you and me, like for the thousands.
Well, it's important because if the option is we can only give Jaren Jackson Jr., 1/3 of $1 billion, I'm rounding up here, or so there's a huge difference there for sure. But I'm like, if Memphis doesn't want to pay him, and you obviously take an extension off the table and a supermax off the table if you move him, I'd throw everything. I'd throw money and all the picks I have. Maybe not all the picks because they have a ton. But like, you have picks and salary and Jaren Jackson Jr., Sabonis, and Keegan Murray. And I'm assuming Memphis doesn't want Levine as part of that just because you have Bane and Ja. So then you're using DeMar and Monk, and there are other teams involved. I don't know if that makes the Kings, puts them on the right path, but that's certainly that I would like. That's a win now move I can get on board with at Sacramento. If you don't have anything else to add, Mort, this was fun as always. Can you tell and we went way too long on just these, but this is stuff, big picture stuff that we need to talk about. Can you just tell our listeners where they can find you and all the work that you do?
Yes, you can find me over at Blue Sky at MSJ NBA. You'll find my work there from Forbes, from Yahoo. I'm sharing links to my podcast, both the Danish one, which is called Buzzer Beater, and the NBA podcast as well.
Until next time, and as always, thank you, Mort. We'll talk to you soon, and I leave everybody with the shout out to the one, the only, the indelible Frank Ntilikina.